What's up, everybody? You saw the title. I used to be the cleanup man. Now, if you're familiar with my show, you're probably wondering why am I not going live right now at 9 a.m. I'm calling an audible. I'm doing something a little different today. Doing a pre-recorded podcast that I'm going to drop. That I'm dropping right now. I'll still probably be talking like I'm live because that's how I do it. I one take hove it now. I used to do edited videos, but now I just do it in one take. But here we go. Here we go. The title here, I used to be the cleanup man. Anybody who's in this, what we call the black YouTube, these black YouTube streets, or more in particular, the black manosphere, is very familiar with the concept of the cleanup man. And you probably remember the famous podcast done by Mumia Obsidian Ali called Why I Refuse to Be the Cleanup Man. But so many black men, we talk about that in a short-handed way now, and it comes off in a negative type of way. Man, fuck these bitches. I ain't cleaning up after these bitches. And they lay down with these ain't shit niggas and all of that. And but reality is reality. And more black men have been stepdads or long-term living boyfriends with women with children than any other man. Because there's more children being born out of wedlock in the black community than any other community. So by default, it logically concludes that more of us have been the cleanup man than any other group of men. And that's why the Obsidian's Why I Refuse to Be the Cleanup Man really hit home and really hit hard. It hit hard. Like, we saw it, we knew it, we felt it. We knew exactly where he was coming from. And many of us were either once upon a time the cleanup man or still currently the cleanup man. Now, I'm no longer, not currently, the cleanup man. And I won't be the cleanup man again. So in that sense, I do agree with Obsidian. I refuse to be the cleanup man. And I would urge any young black man who got his shit together, who's looking to build a life and start a family, I would urge him to start his own family from the ground up with a woman who has managed her eggs, ovaries, and vagina quite well. That's what I would recommend any young brother with a good head on his shoulders to do. However, there are some brothers who have had children out of wedlock themselves, and I think they do need to adjust their standard a bit. Well, they don't have to, but I think that's fair. If you have kids, I think dealing with a woman with kids shouldn't be that much of a problem. Now, I have kids from a marriage, and there was a stepchild in that marriage. But going forward after my marriage, I'm not being the cleanup man anymore. Because I'm not doing it again. Because I did it once. I did my time. I served my sentence as cleanup man. My noble duty to the community. I've been there, I've done that, and I'm going to talk about that. The highs, lows, and in-betweens when it comes to that. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about it quite candidly, quite fluidly, going forward in this podcast. But we are where we are. We are where we are as black people. And looking back at my journeys as the cleanup man, and I'll even go back a little further than that before I even get to myself. My stepdad was essentially the cleanup man. My mom had 3 kids. She married a man who couldn't have children, but he wanted a family. But we were like 13, 14, and 15. We were some older kids. And my experiences there with my stepdad, it was definitely beneficial. So I want to make sure when I'm going into this, I'm striking the right tone, because I understand how it's some value in it. It was value in me seeing, a man be a man and do the things that a man is supposed to do. I would see him no matter how early I woke up. I couldn't get up early enough to be up before he was out the door. He was up at 5 a.m., you know, getting ready for work. And sometimes he's out the door before 5 a.m. Didn't see him again until sometime after 6 p.m. That was me as a 13-year-old boy for the first time really seeing a man doing what a man is supposed to do. Now, my mom was previously married. Her husband then, he tried, but, he had some problems that I'm not going to get into. But my mom and my dad were never married. My dad died when I was young. So at 13, when my mom got with the man who ultimately became my stepdad, that was my first time really seeing a man doing the things that a man is supposed to do. And it did have a positive effect on my life. It did. It did. No doubt about that. So when we're talking about the cleanup man, I just want to make it clear that we're talking about somebody who is in many ways doing a noble thing. And the only major problem with it, the only thing that makes it a problem is that if this man isn't getting the utmost respect in that situation, that's when it becomes a problem. Or if we're talking about the guy who's done all the right things in his life, has his head on straight, looking to start a family, I do think he should start from the ground up and start him a family from the ground up, from the beginning. I do believe that. I will stand by that in this discussion, so to speak. But I do wholeheartedly 100% think that it is a good and noble thing to do, but I caution men about doing it for a number of reasons that I'm going to get into. But definitely was a positive effect on my life. And even though it was times when I didn't like him, even though it was times I felt like he was an antagonizing jackass, in many ways he was. But it overall was a net positive. It can be a net positive if a woman gets with the right guy who's the cleanup man, and she doesn't limit his control or his say in the running of that house, in the rearing of those children. It can indeed, definitely, absolutely, positively be a positive thing that will work. It will work out best for the children, for the woman, but for the man, he's just bearing the brunt of a lot of responsibility that just really someone else's responsibility. So the guy is doing a noble thing. And we can see how the woman benefits. We can see how the children benefits. When it comes to how the man benefits, harder to see that. Somebody say, "Oh, well, he gets a woman who's going to be a woman to him." Okay, he can get that with a woman that does not have 3 kids. So there's that. So even though I, as a child, benefited from a man who was the cleanup man, our life got easier. He was a construction worker. My mom, she was a supervisor at a hotel. So putting their money together, okay, we went from, probably statistical poverty, maybe. I don't know exactly where we fell on the line, but 4 people and supervisor at a hotel. She was a housekeeping supervisor, like maid in Manhattan, but worked her way to the top to where she's hiring the other maids. That was sort of the situation, and I don't know if that salary with 4 kids probably put you beneath the poverty line. So we went from below the poverty line to comfortably middle class with their 2 incomes coming together. Definitely a net positive for the woman and the children in that situation. But when you look at the man, I can look at it now as a man and say that situation isn't as much of a net positive for that man in the equation. So that's why I get the arguments that I refuse to be the cleanup man. I refuse to clean up after somebody else who made decisions dealt with men who were not committed, or dealt with men who were not willing to take on that responsibility. And you just go down my previous podcast, my previous live streams. If you're saying to yourself that, oh well, was that woman supposed to be able to predict the future and know exactly what to cut the crap, cut the crap. Women know, particularly black women, many of them horrible at picking fathers for their children, but they know how to knock it out the park when it comes to picking a stepdad for their children. And that brings me to me and my situation, where I was the cleanup man. When I got married at 19, the woman that I married, she had a 15-month-old. The father of that 15-month-old had previously did time in prison. When I tell you I fit the stereotype of what the black manosphere talks about to a T, absolutely. Absolutely 100%. Was the cleanup man for a woman who got pregnant by someone not too long after he had just got out. There it is. Now, me and her, we worked together in high school. She was older than me. She graduated before me, and I said we sort of de facto agreed that by the time when I graduated, we were going to get back together. You know, that was just tongue in cheek. We were saying that, but sometime around the time that I was about to graduate, I called her up, and lo and behold, she was there and pregnant, impregnated by the guy who had, probably been out of prison for roughly a year. Maybe a year. I don't know. So there's that. She was pregnant, told me the whole story, the tears, he was abusive, he was this, he left me alone and pregnant and blah, 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 blah. Sad story, don't get me wrong, I'm not insensitive to it, I understand it's a sad story. But a lot of these conversations can desensitize you to woman tears because y'all keep running into that gauntlet. But some people got to learn the hard way. So, what ended up happening is I was there for her while she was pregnant. I was still in high school. Did some things that would definitely get criticized in these spaces now. I went to a Lamaze class for a child that was not my child. I did all of those things. Was 100% there for her up until the point to where she had the child. And then the biological dad appeared back on the scene, and she gave him another chance. And it went about how you would expect. The same thing continued to happen. He continued on with his abuse and blah, 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 blah. And long story short, she left him, and then me and her got back together. At this point, the child was roughly 6 months old. I'm out of high school by then, and a year later, me and her was married. When the child was 15, 16 months old. Something like that. That was something like the whole rundown in the case of it. Now, bought a house and got married. Bought a house at 19, got married to a baby mama. There it is. I was the cleanup man. I was the guy who was washing away all the sins. You would think in that situation you would get a lot of respect. You'd think in that situation that it would be greatly appreciated. Guess what? That's not always the case. It depends on that woman. Depends on the temperament of that woman. And some women are to the point to where, yes, they do expect men to do that, to the point to where they don't understand the gravity of what this man is doing. Because there I was, 19 years old, with a whole life ahead of me. But I was taking on the responsibilities of some dude that had already ruined his life. That's where it becomes a problem, where you come hell or high water, you should not do that. You absolutely should not do that as a young man with your life ahead of you. You absolutely should not do it. Now, I previously talked about how it was beneficial when somebody else essentially did that with my mom. That was a different situation because, he was well into his 30s. He couldn't have children and he wanted a family. So it was a workable situation there, but it was no reason for me to lunge forward doing that. And I could talk about the benefits. I could talk about the benefits for everybody. I could definitely talk about the benefits that it gave to the woman because she was raised in a very Christian background. So she wanted to wash away her sins, so to speak. So she liked the fact that she could go to church with me, especially after me and her had a child and we're there with 2 kids, and both of those kids, younger, very young children, 2 years apart, were looking like they were both ours. We're, joining a new church. So she could pretend like the guy she got pregnant by didn't exist. In fact, that's what she wanted to do. She wanted to wash away those sins. I was essentially the perfume she was spraying over her shit, basically. When somebody has, when somebody stinks, they didn't take a bath and they just try to spray some cologne over it. Yeah, that was me. That's what I was. I was like the cologne or perfume that was sprayed over an unwashed body. But as you know, you can't spray cologne and perfume over musty armpits. It won't work. That funk is going to come through. But that's what it was for her. That was her benefit in it. The benefit for the child, great benefit. Great, absolute 100% benefits for the child involved. Because what did he have? He had a good father in the home. Absolutely. I was absolutely doing my best. I was all over the place. I was taking him to school. I was coaching him in basketball. I was at all the games, and I was the coach. And even when it was a sport he was playing that it wasn't really my particular sport. I mean, I like football, but I'm not really equipped to coach football. But when he was playing, I got out there and was helping out, I was doing it all. And it just so happened that my first biological child, he wasn't really even into sports. I tried to get him into it, but he just wasn't into it. And so I couldn't even really share that with him. So I was sharing it and giving it all to my stepson in the equation. Now, eventually, some 7 years later, had another child that was into sports, and me and him, a lot of time has flown by. He's in the 6th grade now, and we just finished up a basketball season where I was coaching him. Had a great time. So, but going forward, I was all in, and the biological dad did eventually get visitation and would see him every other weekend with a little controversy here and there. Little problems there, slight run-ins, never got to blows between me and him, but he was a loose cannon. He was crazy. Like I said, he was abusive back when he was with my ex-wife. So, and that abuse carries over, and it was situations where me and him almost got into it. But I mean, that part came with the territory. It's like he didn't like some of the things I was doing with his child, but I mean, he wasn't doing it. But that's part of the problem. There you are doing something that somebody else should be doing. And looking back at it, when I analyze things with the eyes and the mind that I have now, I look back at it and you know what? He wasn't wrong about everything he was saying, even though he was content with just being the every other weekend and Wednesday from 5 to 8 dad. And sometimes some Wednesdays he didn't show up for every night, every now and then he would miss a weekend, but he was content with being the uncle dad, so to speak. He was content with that. But some things he was saying and some of the bullshit that my ex-wife was doing, looking back at it, he was right about some of that bullshit, but he also had his own bullshit. But I mean, it was 2 people, my ex-wife and the father of her child, that both of them were some bullshitters. So it was no surprise that they did bullshit. It was no surprise that there were weird, unnecessary arguments, weird, unnecessary phone calls, weird, unnecessary why this and why that and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And I'm right there in between, and I got to get on the phone and mediate between the two situations, between two crazy people who really just want to kill each other, but they just gonna yell and scream over the phone and have me in the middle of it. Like little shit like that I'm having to deal with. Responsibility that I'm taking on at 19 years old. You know, she was 2 years older than me. And this dude was like 8 years older than me. So even when I'm in my, early 20s, I'm 21, 22, this dude's 31 and shit, He's 31, did time in prison. She's 24, and it was a less than ideal situation. And not to shit on the man completely, because he did, when it came to being involved with his son, he did try, despite through all the bullshit. Not to shit on. I don't want to just shit on another black man, but I mean, look. He tried. He had other sons. He had other shit going on. He had multiple kids by multiple women. Like I said, the stereotype was it was a black manosphere. Like when I found this space in YouTube with men talking about this shit, I was like, man, they ain't telling the story of my life. Like the stereotype is that a lot of the people that are talking all this shit on the internet, they haven't lived anything. They're just talking some shit they heard other people say. No, fuck all that. I lived it. I lived it and I know it. I lived it and I know it. And this isn't just me just reciting talking points. I lived a life. I was married 13 years. I married and divorced. Was in the eye of that storm. But the overall situation for the child, it was a great thing. If somebody is talking about duty to country and community, then okay, yeah, I did that. And me and him had, moments where it was very similar to that famous scene in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, when Uncle Phil and when Will Smith, when his biological dad came on the scene for a few episodes or episode or two, and then they were supposed to do something, and then he just kited on them and left and couldn't do it. And then, Fresh Prince had that moment where he broke down and was like, I don't need him, I don't do blah blah blah, and then broke down, but why don't you love me, and then and I had to do the Uncle Phil thing in that moment.
Yeah, man, I'm glad you're here. Some business came up I gotta handle, so we're gonna have to put our trip on hold. You understand?
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
Just for a couple of weeks.
I understand.
Yeah, maybe a little longer.
Yeah, whatever.
Look, I'll call you next week and we'll iron out the details. Okay?
Yeah.
It was great seeing you, son.
You too, Lou.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Will.
You know what? Actually, this works out better for me. The Slimmies of summer come to class wearing next to nothing. You know what I'm saying?
Will, it's all right to be angry.
Hey, why should I be mad? I'm saying at least he said goodbye this time. I just wish I hadn't wasted my money buying this stupid present.
I'm sorry. If there was something that I
Hey,
could
you know what? You ain't got to do nothing, Uncle Phil. Hey, ain't like I'm still 5 years old, Ain't like I'm gonna be sitting up every night asking my mom, when's Daddy coming home, Who needs him? Hey, he wasn't there to teach me how to shoot my first basket, but I learned, didn't I? Hey, I got pretty damn good at it too, didn't I, Uncle Phil?
You did.
Got through my first date without him, right? I learned how to drive, I learned how to shave, I learned how to fight without him. I had 14 great birthdays without him. He never even sent me a damn card. To hell with him! I ain't need him then, and I don't need him now.
Well,
Nah, you know what, Uncle Phil? I'm gonna get through college without him. I'm gonna get a great job without him. I'm gonna marry me a beautiful honey, and I'm gonna have me a whole bunch of kids. I'm gonna be a better father than he ever was. And I sure as hell don't need him for that, because ain't a damn thing he could ever teach me about how to love my kids. How come he don't want me, man?
You know, I had to be Uncle Phil in that moment. And yeah, I've done that. And then even despite that, it's like I feel like, my stepson, growing up, and look, time has flown now. He's 19 now. I feel like he appreciates it, but there's moments when it seems like he doesn't. And maybe he's going to have to become a man before he fully appreciates it. Because I remember, and I talked about this before when I watched that Dwayne Wade documentary, when he talked about how his mom was a crackhead, how his mom never saw one of his games in high school. She was in and out of prison because of her drug use. She never saw him play a single game in college until he was in the tournament his junior year in Marquette. That was the year before he went to the NBA. So she saw like his last two college games at Marquette. His last two games are the only two that she saw. If I'm not mistaken, she started watching during that tournament, right before the Final Four. So there's that. His dad, on the other hand, who he moved with when he was, I think, 9, 10. I forgot how old he was when the mom's drug use got bad to the point that, like Dwayne Wade said, he used to see his mom doing heroin in front of him. The sister dropped him off at the dad house. Now check this out. Now the dad is the one who taught him how to play basketball, because the dad had other sons, and Dwayne Wade was the youngest, so he was getting roughed up. They had the boys playing against grown men, just fouling them, hacking them. If you cry, you don't get to eat. He just raised them up as some tough, hard-nosed, just chest-beating man shit. Like he raised them up in that and made them tough and put the ball in his hand, taught him how to play basketball and roughed him up and made him into a man. However, when Dwayne Wade was about 16, I think a junior in high school by then, after about 8 years of, being taught how to be a man with his dad, his dad was also a toxic person. I think it was a lot of abuse. He put it mildly when he explained it, but we could read between the lines. It was a lot of abuse between his dad and his stepmom, and he didn't want to be in that toxic environment, so he moved in with his girlfriend and her mom, I think his junior or senior year in high school or something like that, and went on to college and was playing at Marquette and all of that and so forth and so on, and was heavily, recruited or scouted or whatever by the NBA, was a 5th pick in the NBA draft. And at that moment, when he became, when he was getting drafted, David Stern stepped up there, said with the 5th pick in the NBA draft, the Miami Heat select Dwayne Wade. The first thing you saw him get up, give a big hug and a kiss to his mama, his sisters. I'm looking around. Where is his dad? Where is his dad? The dad wasn't there. And he said later in the documentary that after he had sons, like some 10 years later of being an NBA pro, after he had sons and experienced what he experienced with his sons and dealing with his sons, after he became, a veteran father, so to speak, he reconnected with his dad and had more of an understanding of his dad at that point. And it was like, wow. Like you and your dad just now getting back cool. Yeah, just now reconnecting. And someone said to me, well, maybe the stuff with his dad was worse than what you think it is. But was it worse than the mom doing heroin in front of you? But on draft day, the mom gets to get the the hug and the kiss after your name is called to walk up on that stage and put on the Miami Heat hat and shake the NBA commissioner's hand. Right before all that, your mom gets to get the big hug and a kiss on draft day that washes away all the sins. But his dad couldn't get that. His dad couldn't be there. It's like we don't truly appreciate what men do for us. And it's heartbreaking when you think about that we don't really truly appreciate that. And sometimes I have a hard time finding the words to tell my stepdad, how much I appreciate him. How much I appreciated him. I still fumble when it comes time to try to find those words. Like, that's a really difficult thing for a lot of us men when it comes to showing appreciation for what other men do for us when we're coming up. And in that sense, it's truly a thankless job. It's a thankless job. It's really difficult. And that's why, and I do get at odds. I hit a crossroad where it's difficult for me to say that it's a bad thing, men shouldn't do it, because I know so many men have and so many children have benefited from it. But I still absolutely 100% will tell a young man with his head on straight, he's building a life for himself. He's building a future for himself. He needs to build his own family from the ground up and contribute and deposit into his own legacy. I absolutely 100% agree with that. I absolutely 100% believe that. I absolutely 100% stand by that. I will forever and always, forever and ever, amen, or whatever they say. Will believe that and will stand by that. But so many black men have done that and don't get the credit for it. We are just supposed to, be those soldiers. It's our duty marching into that battlefield, and we've done it. We've done it. We've absolutely done it. And yep, I was the cleanup man. And even after the divorce, the relationship with me and my stepson, it didn't change, because whenever I had my two biological sons after the divorce, I still had my stepson after the divorce. Whenever my two biological children from the marriage was with me, my stepson from the marriage was with me. And that's just how it was all the way up until when he turned 18. When he turned 18, he went and moved with his biological dad, because he didn't want to move back in with his mom. For reasons I'm not going to explain here, but if you follow me, you got an idea. If you listen to me in previous live streams, you have an idea. He didn't want to go back into that. But he went and moved in with his dad, and his dad was his dad, and yes, it was some of the same bullshit that he experienced. That And one last thing I'll talk on. I touched on how when he moved back in with his dad after he turned 18, how he got to see firsthand, I shouldn't say moved back in, how he moved in with his dad when he turned 18. He got to experience a lot of the bullshit of his dad. His dad got trying to square off with him and fight over nothing, over some stupid shit. He got to see how much of a loose cannon he was. And that brings me to one point about being a stepdad. You would think that when you're raising a child, even if it's not your child, you would think that your imprint and your influence is going to really carry the way in how this child turns out, but that's not entirely true. It's some things where I could see that I have had a definite positive effect on him and his outlook on life, but he still got his daddy genes in him. Because my oldest biological child is 17, and he's so much like me. But my 19-year-old stepchild from the marriage is so many things about him that it's nothing like me and how I operate. And I'm like, those are his daddy's genes. And sometimes you can't escape that. You can't, your parenting sometimes can't trump over that genetic material that somebody else gave the child that you're trying to raise like your own. That's something that doesn't get talked about nearly as much. And that's something that where I saw that, look, my parenting, my teaching, and all of that, it is not carrying not nearly as much weight in some cases as that genetic material. And that's a tough one. That's a tough one because you're going to find yourself not just fighting to raise your child, but you're fighting against the that person who abandoned the job or fell down on the job or never attempted to do the job to begin with. You go, and that child gets to the point where he's 17, 18, 19, then you're now looking at that person. You're seeing the tendencies of that person who's I hate to use this word. When Black YouTube is one of those favorite D words, you're eye to eye looking at that person who's derelict. I hate that word, derelict. We need to retire it. But it does apply in this situation. It does apply in this situation. And sometimes that's what you're fighting against. And that can be a very difficult thing. A very difficult factor in this equation. And that's a factor that you don't see until they're just about grown. That's when you start seeing that. Sometimes you don't see it until after they're grown. When they're free to make their own decisions and it's just little weird stuff. It was some stuff that his dad got in trouble for. That I'm not even going to go into the details of it. His dad got into some legal troubles. And my stepson at 19, when he's not living with me, got into the same exact legal troubles. Just off some stupidly goofy stuff that just didn't have to, why did you do that? You didn't have to do that. It was an unprovoked, unforced error. It's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I want to hash out the details of what happened, but I'm just opting not to do it because it was just stupid. So I'm not even going to waste time digging into that. But those are some of the problems as well. It's a number of things. If this was a live show, I'd probably dig into it a little more. I'll probably be feeding off questions from the audience that will be prompting me to say more and talk about more and do this and do that. But right now, I think I laid out just the meat of it, so to speak. That yes, I was the cleanup man. I was raised by a cleanup man. I saw the positive benefits that it had on me. I saw the positive benefits that I had on the child that I was the cleanup man for. But even despite all of that, I overall would still encourage a young man with his head on straight to try to start his own family from the ground up. Build and leave your own legacy. That is what I would strongly recommend. It's when will things change? Like if we continue to, so to speak, just fall down on the sword, when will things change? When will we see a benefit? If women full blown, absolutely, positively no. That they can go and give the worst type of men the best years of their life and then go and find Dudley Do Right to come clean it up. If that continues to be the lay of the land, that's out of wedlock birth rate, all of that, everything's going to stay the same. The lack of families that we see, all of that will be the same. And there will be just certain men who are just like the burden bearers of the of that job of cleaning up. But then the thing that makes it even worse, this is the gut punch to it all. The women, many of them don't even fully respect it. Don't even fully respect it. Don't even understand the gravity of the situation with what this man is doing. It's like, how is it even possible that this man could receive even an ounce, even an iota of disrespect in that situation? But these are the men who are, in many cases, they not just, moving the woman in, they marrying this woman. And taking on that burden and that responsibility. But that's what black men do while still getting called deadbeats. But the fact that there are men there and available to help you take care of your kids that's not his, that shows that black men aren't deadbeats. It shows that it's a percentage of them that are, and those are the ones that you're clearly giving raw sexual access to when you're younger and in your prime. Clearly that's the case. And for those that say, oh, well, those men, they just need to be men, they need to step up, they need to do this, they need to do that. Okay. So what you're really saying when you're saying that those men who ain't worth a damn, that they just need to be worth a damn once they get you pregnant, what you're really saying is that you still want to continue to have to give raw sexual access to no good, ain't shit niggas, but after they bust a nut in you, you would like for them to go through a metamorphosis and turn into one of the good black men that you didn't want to fuck. But I say no. I say no. Those are the men that you need to be trying to get with if family, commitment, love, and anything that remotely resembles a traditional nuclear family is what you claim that you want. That's what your mating choices should reflect. If they don't reflect that, if you're giving raw sexual access to men who have no intentions on being there, then yes, you are digging amongst the trash of your community to have sex because they I suppose turn you on in some other way. And yes. All those arguments are correct. All those arguments are correct. But I do have a heart and there's some empathy and I do understand the situation and I look at the children. Well, what about the children? Yes, I do care about the children. So in that sense that I would urge a guy not to do it. But if I see it being done, I don't, it's not a situation where I'm going to shame the guy for doing it. But damn, something's got to give. And if it gives in this way, where men quit doing that, then I think the ultimate outcome would be women would have to ultimately make better choices on who they're getting with, who they're having sex with, who they're having raw sex with. They would have to make better choices in that. And they would have to choose the men who are up for that long-term job. That would be the situation there. But that's how I'm going to conclude this today. That was a personal story that I had to lay out. To talk about that. And maybe we'll do a continuation of this for the live show. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. Because I know there are other stepdads, current stepdads and former stepdads who may wish to weigh in on this. So I do want to open up the mic for other people to weigh in on it. So in that case, catch the live show at 9 a.m. Monday through Friday. And with that said, I am out.